Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our Connections Café. Thank you for choosing to spend your working morning with us. My name is Metod Naidenov. I am SME Development Manager at the Connected Places Catapult, and I have the pleasure of hosting this virtual Connections Café. As many of you probably know, this is our regular event for business support and networking. And in this particular instance, it is the last Connections Café before we hit the pause for the summer and reconvene again later in the autumn. Just a few bits about Connected Places Catapult. We are the UK Centre of Excellence for Mobility Infrastructure and Built Environment, and our mission can be summarized in our efforts and kind of projects, programs that enable better digital, physical, and social connectedness between communities and places of tomorrow. You will certainly hear more about our role later in the presentation, as we are the focal point of many knowledge exchange activities and working equally comfortably with universities and SMEs. As you can see on the slide, we have a fantastic lineup of speakers today that couldn't cover better an exciting and cross-cutting topic like knowledge exchange and collaboration between universities and innovative SMEs. We'll hear joint presentations of academics and industry leaders who kindly agreed to share with you valuable insights and opportunities on their knowledge exchange projects and journeys. A bit of housekeeping before we start. We'll be hosting a panel Q&A session at the end of the last presentation at 11:45. So please use the Q&A function to ask questions throughout the webinar, and I will pick up as many of them as possible during that panel. As you can see, unlike earlier virtual Connections Cafés, we have fewer presentations, but with more speakers. So again, please keep your questions for the 11:45 panel discussion. This webinar is being recorded and live streamed. And for those of you who expressed an interest in joining us for the breakout networking sessions, we will follow up with how to join those session information at the end of the speaker session. Without further ado, and in terms of running order, our first speaker is University of Brighton, represented by its Knowledge Exchange Manager, Jennifer Wells, and Professor Rob Morgan, Professor in Thermal Propulsion in Advanced Engineering Center at the university, together with Simon Brewster and Nick Owen of Dolphin and Dolphin 2, who are on a joint mission to power the freight transport to its net zero journey. So Jennifer, over to you and your colleagues. If you're here.
Thank you, Matadi. I do believe that Simon's going to be opening our presentation.
Okay.
So if you'd like to sorry. Thank you.
Simon, please.
Yeah. Hello. I'm here. Yeah. Okay.
So floor is yours, Simon.
Okay. Okay. So good morning, everybody. I'm Simon Brewster, CEO of Dolphin N2. Should we launch into the material? Thank you so much. Okay. It's fantastic to be able to join you this morning and explain the journey that we've had together with the University of Brighton over some considerable time, and the benefits that this has generated. So if we skip to the next one, I'll explain a little about Dolphin N2. So yeah, thank you so much. So Dolphin N2 was established within Ricardo PLC, incubated on the south coast of England to take a novel, disruptive technology to market. We were founded in 2017, incubated ourselves for 2 years, and I led the incubation together with Nick Owen, who is CTO. After developing successive rounds of data and going to market, we were acquired outright by FPT Industrial at the end of 2019. At the time, a team of 7 transferred across. We now have a team of 35 who are based on the south coast and also in the Midlands in Millbrook. And we have workshop and test resources at both locations. We are currently wrapping up the first step of technology demonstration in order to launch a full production program, which is ramping up now, targeting serial production in 2025, 2026 to align with the introduction of Euro 7 emissions legislation and the European CO2 greenhouse gas legislation for trucks. So today, on behalf of Dolphin, I have the pleasure of speaking with you as CEO of Dolphin, together with Nick Owen, who is the technical director. And just for reference, FPT Industrial is one of the 4 subsidiaries of C&H Industrial, which is a global manufacturer of capital equipment. It's a $30 billion company employing 70,000 people. So it is a major player in the world's equipment sector and gives us a fantastic path to market. Thank you. Over to Nick. Oh, is this one yours, Nick, or mine?
Sorry, I think this is for Rob and Jen.
Okay. Right, fine.
Next slide.
Right, Rob, would you like to speak to this, as it really much plays into the Advanced Engineering Centre?
Okay, so just come off mute. Thanks, Jen. So the Advanced Engineering Centre at the university has been established for about 25 years now, primarily working on internal combustion engines in the early days, but now is a much more multidisciplinary research centre focused on thermofluid mechanics. So we still work on engines and the collaboration with Dolphin, but we also do advanced cooling for batteries and cooling systems for satellites. We're also one of the Advanced Propulsion Centre's spokes, part of the Centre of Excellence network through that organisation, and we're focused on thermal efficiency. So next slide, please. That's you, Jen.
Unmute. Thanks, Rob. Hi, I'm Jen Wells, Knowledge Exchange Manager for our School of Architecture, Technology and Engineering within the AEC, actually sits within that school. I'm also delighted to be a Catapult Business Fellow. So I just want to talk really briefly, it's more of a broad overview of the University of Brighton and the work we do with businesses more generally. So although established as a university in 1992, we can trace our roots back to 1859. We established a School of Art in the kitchens, the Royal Pavilion, very iconic building down here in Brighton. So we orient our research and enterprise activity around a system called Centres of Excellence, which bring together academic colleagues from multiple disciplines and subject areas that are really internationally recognized for the impact of their work. 2 of those centres sit within my school. Advanced Engineering is one. We also have a Centre for Secure, Usable and Intelligent Systems, which very much focuses on things around AI, human-computer interaction, and security and privacy by design. So some of you may be aware that there was a recently published sort of research report, if you like, looking at how universities engage with their partners and very much the impact that they have on their knowledge exchange activities. So University of Brighton are very proud of our results, having scored in the top 30% for our research partnerships and in the top 50% for the work we do with our businesses. So another initiative that we're incredibly proud of is the KTP program. Some of you may be aware of it, which is a part government scheme to enable university industry collaborations. We were the first university to set up an established KTP center focusing exclusively on supporting businesses with that program. We thus far have a 100% track record in securing funding, and we've had over 250 programs running thus far. Next slide, please. Thank you. So I'm not going to run through all of these very specific and, if you like, very well established mechanisms. All universities work in this way to a certain extent or another. I think the thing I would like to say about Brighton, which is, I suppose, unique to our DNA, literally from those very early days in the kitchens of the Royal Pavilion, training artisans and craftsmen is very much our focus on applied, what we call practical wisdom, and applying what we do in a really meaningful sense. The other thing I suppose that I would really like to stress is not just University of Brighton, but all universities participating today very much operate an open door policy. It's very much around access to networks, funding, and very much applied solutions. So I personally take a very flexible approach, no matter where you might be in your development as a business, or indeed where you might be in your innovation journey. And I'd like to leave you with an example of how that flexibility might work in practice. Next slide, please. Thank you. So at the very beginning of the pandemic, gosh, probably 18 months ago now, it seems longer, doesn't it? I was contacted by an anesthesiologist with the NHS, Dr. Rachel Grimaldi. She was on maternity leave, and after reading about the difficulty her colleagues were having with communicating to COVID-19 patients through the barriers of PPE, she came up with a novel digital communication sort of flashcard tool to really support her frontline colleagues to communicate with and relay really vital, critical information to terribly unwell people with COVID-19. How could you do this with the barrier of PPE? She got to a stage where she really wanted to be able to consider how this could be rolled out more broadly. She needed funding, and she literally started a business from the back bedroom of her parents' house in Florida while stuck there during the height of the pandemic. So she contacted the university, and what we did is we put together a very broad ranging group of people to support Rachel with her work, everybody from medical educators, software developers, speech and language therapists. We also provided access to professional bodies and secured 2 different lots of government funding so we could evaluate the tool and to help her support the rollout. And it is now being used in over 120 countries. A project I was personally deeply involved with and one I was incredibly proud to be part of. So just a very small, but I think important example of the flexibility I'd say that we have here at Brighton in terms of supporting businesses in multiples of different ways. So thanks for the opportunity to speak with you, and looking forward to catching up in the networking section later. Thanks very much.
Okay, the next bit is me. I'm Nick Owen, Technical Director at Dolphin N2. Would you move on one? Okay, thank you. So heavy-duty propulsion is difficult. We hear a lot in the press about road transport, but mostly what we talk about is cars. Cars spend 95% of their time parked and 5% of their time driving. That suits electrification very well. Short journeys, multiple recharging opportunities, including at home, or if it's a van at a depot. And cars are less powerful than trucks generally. So if anything costs so many pounds per kilowatt or per kilowatt hour, electricity suits it well. So yes, we will see a lot of battery electric cars, perhaps hydrogen fuel cells extending their range for people who do a lot of longer journeys. However, heavy duty is very difficult, and you may be sitting there wondering, why the heck are we opening this with somebody talking about an engine? Aren't they going to be banned? Well, consider this. If you're working 20 hours a day through to 24/7, that's a very long range requirement, a very long working day with very little refueling opportunity. You will need infrastructure for that refueling everywhere that you go, whether that's recharging, catenary wires slung over the road, hydrogen, or whatever. The high power of these things means that if you're paying per kilowatt or per kilowatt hour, the cost just goes up linearly. The high load factor that you're operating at means that each of those kilowatts or kilowatt hours will cost you more. 150,000 miles, which is a lifetime for a car, is 2 years in a long haul truck. And that's just the average. The ones that work hard do it in little more than a year. So we're not progressing like light duty in terms of getting rid of conventional fossil fueled powertrains, despite the fact that the annual fuel burn creates an enormous cost incentive. What if there was a better way? Something that was painless to adopt for a smooth transition to net zero propulsion. Something like, for example, a very clean, very efficient fuel omnivorous engine or power unit of some sort would be a better way. Next slide, please. So the recuperated split cycle engine, we think, is that better way. I'm not going to go through all the details of the science here. We'd be here all day if I did that. But essentially what we've done is we've divided how a 4-stroke engine works up into its individual cold and hot cylinders, allowing each one to be optimized. A hot side is always hot and highly insulated. The cold side is cooled by injecting water or even liquid nitrogen to cool the compression process. And in between, you recuperate wasted exhaust energy. That will get you to 55% thermal efficiency, or 60% with the liquid nitrogen version. And that's better than an installed PEM fuel cell of the type people are looking at for heavy duty transport if you run at the higher loads that trucks and diggers and things tend to run at. So we've got something that's very efficient. It's also very clean. That process of transferring high pressure air from left to right allows you to burn very, very cleanly, particularly NOx, which is your troublesome emission in any sort of heavy duty engine. Is much, much lower, about 1/10 of the engine out level of a conventional engine, which means that it's quite easy to get down to the California SULEV level of NOx, which is lower than even the Euro 7 proposals. If you put a more sophisticated cleanup system on, you can get down to 1 microgram per cubic meter of NOx, which is below ambient in many UK cities. So you've got an internal combustion engine, even a diesel engine, that cleans the air as you drive through the city. That's a bit novel, isn't it? But it's not just a diesel engine. It might spend the first 5% of its useful life being a diesel fueled engine, but actually this is a fuel omnivorous engine. Hydrogen and biomethane have both been validated and can be retrofitted. Even things like ammonia for shipping are a possibility. Key point here is that this is new. This isn't an evolutionary 4-stroke. There's a lot of new physics in here. Next slide. So we don't have the benefit of 100 to 140 years odd, which gasoline engines, diesel engines, fuel cells and the like have all had, even batteries rarely have had, to get to market. We want to be in the market mid-decade. First with a diesel product, because that's what's all over the world's highways, but moving very quickly to sustainable fuel variants and having a totally net zero fleet by about 2040, which is when our parent company has said that it will stop selling diesel trucks. So we've come very quickly from basically a lab experiment 2 years ago to a running prototype now in the lab. And getting them into vehicles by the end of next year. We need all the help we can get with that. So what do we do? Next slide, please. So we collaborate. We collaborate with a lot of people, not just with Brighton Uni, which is what we're highlighting today, but we have had to go to SMEs in the supply chain to make parts that nobody makes. So the recuperator, you can't just go to a standard automotive truck supplier and say, we'll have one of those, please. It runs at 800 degrees C and 70 bar. That's pretty challenging. Currently, we only have one company in the world who can make them, so we're collaborating with them. Likewise, insulating the hot cylinder, that's not standard supply chain stuff. We're working with another UK SME on that. And again, some of these sustainable fuels, they're not on every forecourt yet. So we're working with a specialist in biomethane for agriculture, but also in the critical tankage for storing cryogenic fuels. We also work with 3 academic partners. University of Sheffield Advanced Manufacturing Research Centre helps us to help those SMEs put some of their stuff together. The University of Milan is our parent company's long-term combustion modelling partner. So if we want to design an engine on the computer, it's them that we can go to for some specialist tools there. But our long-standing partnership with Brighton is one of the biggest, working across a broad spectrum of topics and now secured by a long-term collaboration agreement that defines how we fund them, the service level we get, and who owns the IP and so forth. Next one. So with that in mind, I'll hand you back over to Rob, who will tell you how that has worked in a bit more detail. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Nick. Go to the next slide, please. So what I'm going to talk about is a little bit of an alternative approach that we took and has now been formed into an initiative we call the Impact Factory, really to look at some of the problems that were coming out in developing this type of engine. As Nick said, this isn't a diesel engine. This is a whole new form of propulsion technology. And this has developed a kind of a different way of thinking about engineering problems that we call the Impact Factory. So I'm just going to talk really about what this means and how it generates some quite interesting solutions. So really, as engineers, we try to simplify the world. We use our skills to narrow problems down to the point where we can solve them and come up with some great solutions. And most of the time this works, but not always. And we were finding this when we were looking at the whole question of there was the banning of combustion engines, and particularly in heavy duty sector, we were thinking, well, what else are you going to do? And it was interesting on the news this morning. There's there is going to be a banning of diesel and petrol in 2040 has been proposed, but specifically not the propulsion technology. And you could see some of the responses from the industry were, well, what are we actually going to use? Well, obviously we think they'd use a split cycle engine, but the technologies are much less mature in that sector on what you do. So in this framework of we felt confusion. We wondered, well, what actually are we going to do? Selfishly for me, this was, what's my research agenda going to be for the next 15 years? Do I need to go and do something else? And we kind of blundered into a way of thinking that's more common in the social sciences. They don't talk about well-organized problems that you can simplify to the point you can solve them. They talk about messy problems or wicked problems, which are hard to solve, where the boundary conditions aren't clear. A lot of influence of biasing, whether it's confirmatory biasing or political biasing in developing those solutions. And it's interesting, if you go into the social sciences and say, what are the top three examples of wicked problems? Well, the top one is climate change. The second one was global pandemics, and this was before COVID. And the third one is arms control. So those are the three big messy problems. And it was interesting to see that climate change was one of them. So really what we try to do with the Impact Factory is where you're in this messy situation. And if you're in a messy situation, you basically, if you've got something that's it just doesn't seem to be able to solve it, the problem keeps reoccurring, it keeps on coming back to bite you, it's not clear what you need to do, then it could well be quite messy. And what we do in the Impact Factory is to try and, if you like, embrace that mess, to get to the point where we really understand what the question is that we need to be answering, and then use classical science and engineering techniques to get to the solution. So cover the next slide.
Hi, Rob. I just want to ask you whether should we drive through the slides as you speak, or?
Next slide, please. Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, right. So what does it look like? So if you look at innovation, you typically get two types of clustering of centres. You get centres of excellence where you've got a very well-defined problem and you're looking for fast, innovative solutions. So the classic examples: Lockheed Martin Skunk Works. The group set up there who developed the first supersonic plane. My favourite plane, the SR-71 Blackbird. Where very, very clear spec and some real innovation needed to meet that solution. You then get sorts of things you see quite often in the tech sector, the innovation centres. So groups of people coming up with just clever stuff without a defined need. So things like graphene, fantastic piece of science, but we're only really just beginning to realise where we use it. And if you look at the sorts of things that the California tech companies are doing, they're really got very blue sky innovation centres, really without really searching for purpose. So the Impact Factory we see sits between these two. So we often are working in a space where it's not quite clear where we're going. We're not quite clear what the problem is we're trying to solve, but there's a pressing need. And you combine those two together, then you get high impact. And if you I think this has particularly come out through Brighton, because if you look at our overall strategy as an organisation, it is around something we call practical wisdom, about creation of an application of knowledge, and really the Impact Factory is just an example of practical wisdom in practice. So go to the next slide, please. So what's interesting about how we set this up is this is a three-way partnership. So we see this partnering between our student body, our research academics and researchers, and enterprise. So if you look at myself first of all as a researcher, I'm always looking for what's the next interesting thing I can go and work on. But I come with a lot of baggage. A lot of experience, but also perhaps a narrowing of my worldview through those experiences. And if you look at many people on this call working out in enterprise, likewise, you're looking for the next thing, next great product to sell, but also you come with also a lot of potential baggage and perhaps a narrowing of your worldview. But also you come with the physical and financial capital. But of course, at a university, we have this large number of young, bright minds without experience, but with a very open view on the world, and also a huge amount of enthusiasm. And we see these as natural impact factory practitioners. You throw some of these messy problems at them, and they just naturally start to think in a way which produces some highly innovative solutions. And by bringing those three kind of stakeholder groups together, we've found that we've got a very successful model that's produced highly differentiated, great experience for our students, some great research projects for us, and some great solutions and graduates, future employees, for our enterprise partners. Go to the next slide, please. So I'll just give you just two very quick examples of what's come out. So one of the, through the work we've done with Dolphin, and I think Nick alluded to it earlier, is the first thing we were thinking is, fossil fuels are going to, are not the future. We need to move away from that. And when we were working on this, we're in an environment where basically the answer was electrification. So whenever you talk to anybody, they say, well, of course, we're just going to electrify. And we were sat there thinking, well, that's a bit difficult in some places, aeroplanes, boats, and heavy duty trucks. So we started to think about this more fundamentally and realized that the real question you should be asking is how do you convert solar energy, which is basically the primary energy supply to the planet, into torque in the most efficient means. And that kind of opens you up to thinking in different ways. So go to the next slide, please. And where this took us to, this is kind of, how would you have got to this place without this type of thinking, is realizing that there's a link between if you can link the transport sector with the waste management sector, and how do you move to a more sustainable circular economy. We realised that in the circular economy there are, there was always waste products. If you go back to James Lovelock's work, from the work on Gaia that he did, which I think was the first real example of this human impact on the planet, then recognising that methane is emitted in many different processes, and we just don't realise it. I mean, the simple act of cutting your lawn and piling the grass up in the corner produces methane, and that is a greenhouse gas. So if we can collect that and densify that and use that as a transport fuel, we're not only removing a dangerous greenhouse gas from the atmosphere, we're also solving our problem. So if we go to the second slide, just in the last minute or so. Next slide, please. So the second question was that we had, so we found a way of producing some sustainable fuel. And the second problem we saw with kind of an engine is, how do you address the toxic emissions? And, I've been working with diesel engines for many years, and basically we start off with an engine which is inherently producing a lot of NOx, a lot of dangerous oxides of nitrogen, and then we do lots and lots of things to try and suppress that NOx. So fundamentally, a diesel engine produces NOx emissions. So we go to the next slide, please. And what we did was we found we had to unlearn all that experience we had with diesel technology to come up with a more fundamental view of how those emissions are produced and how can we produce a better way of converting that chemical energy in the fuel into useful torque. And we basically thought, well, we've got to rewrite the rule book and avoid the conditions where we produce NOx. And that led to designing sort of a more innovative architecture around the split cycle engine, where essentially we decoupled the link between efficiency. So a diesel engine is at its most efficient when it's producing the most NOx. So by decoupling that relationship, we could then produce an engine which had high efficiency and ultra low NOx. And there's some data there, and that green zone there, I think that Nick was alluding to earlier, you can see we've got clusters of test results on a range of fuels. And at that point there, you really don't have a NOx problem. You'd be more worried about other sources of pollution, things like the brakes on the vehicle, than you are than the tailpipe. So these all came out through the collaboration with Dolphin and this kind of new way of thinking of this type of problem through the impact factory. So I think that's me done. I don't think there's any more slides. Oh, okay. I think that's back to you, Nick.
Yeah, just finally. So how this really manifests itself is a multi-cylinder mule engine, of which we've got 3, one being installed at Brighton. Single cylinders looking at both the cold and hot halves, spray rigs looking at the various things that we inject. Other critical rigs, actually a university to university collaboration. The breathing rig is actually at Sheffield Uni, but the Brighton guys work with it on optical imaging. Very strong collaborative program, which allows us to focus on the core bit, which is sort of product development, while our academic partners feed us with both knowledge and future insights and things to fill the innovation funnel. And it's a relationship that is working very well indeed. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nick. Thank you, Rob. Thank you, Jen. And thank you, Simon, of course, as well. Well, that was great to hear kind of about this literally kind of amazing collaboration between an SME, like an independent SME, and the University of Brighton. Hearing about the different projects, one the industry-led by Dolphin 2, and the kind of more academic side of the story with the impact factory case study. So again, may I invite the audience to kind of pop in their questions in the Q&A box, and we will try and answer them later in the panel discussion. And with this takes me to our next speakers from University of Leeds, who will present us another way of knowledge exchange and collaboration between universities and how they create kind of spin out some of their kind of enterprise-driven activities in university spin-out. So Eric Thomason, a Research Innovation Development Manager, and David McKee, who leads the University of Leeds spin-out slingshot simulations. Over to you to talk about your digital twin software as a service solution.
Thank you, Matodi, and good morning, everybody. If we could have the first slide, please. So yeah, good morning, everyone. So myself and David McKee, who's a CEO of Slingshot Simulations, a spin-out company from the University of Leeds. We're going to be doing a double act over the next few minutes just to illustrate how the University of Leeds supports collaboration with SMEs and develops innovation as a result of that. So next slide, please. Okay, so just a quick introduction to myself. I'm a Research and Innovation Development Manager at the University of Leeds, which is I sit in the space between the academics and what many people would refer to as the real world. And my job is to help translate the research that is done at the university into real world impact, but also to work with communities out there to make sure that we understand what the opportunities are that exist and how best to apply the academic research that takes place within the university. My legacy role has always been in transport. So when I joined the university, I was based in the Institute for Transport Studies, and that's still where my physical location is now. But I'm now based within a corporate team of research and innovation within our research and innovation service. I've worked with the catapults ever since joining the university and since the inception of what used to be the transport systems catapult around the same time that I joined the university. And as I mentioned on that slide as well, I'm also a part-time business fellow with the Connected Places Catapult, which gives me a couple of days a month just to maintain an ongoing focus on activities through them. Next slide, please. Yeah, this was just a quick slide, just a quote from the Vice Chancellor of the university, again to echo the message from Brighton. The research-intensive universities are very much prioritising working with business as a priority, and it definitely is a top-down priority from the university. So not only from in terms of policy, but also direct investment in our larger research and innovation service, of which I'm part. Next slide, please. Yes, as I mentioned, I'm based in the Institute for Transport Studies, which is one of the leading research centres at the university, but it's also the largest transport research institute in the UK and very well recognised globally. A few other stats there. I mean, we are, as I say, by far the largest. We have a large number of PhD students, which gives us even more research capacity, to undertake small projects with SMEs and with business generally. We have a number of master's programs, and through that we have more than 100 master's student graduates every year, each one of whom completes a master's project, and again that's the opportunity to engage with industry. We have a range of specialisms, as you might expect, with a large number of staff. We have 80+ staff, but one of the new areas or one of the more recent areas of development has been in city simulation, and with the development of our Virtuosity facility. So if you could move to the next slide, please. Yeah, so this is just a view of the outside of the building, but I'd like to show you a very short video now that just captures some of the capabilities, some of the simulators that we have within the facility, but also the fact that this is underpinned by a large team of sort of leading academic staff as well. So if you could just run that video now, please. If I have the next slide. Thank you.
Across the world, our growing towns and cities are becoming ever more complex urban spaces, making it harder to develop solutions that address important challenges, such as congestion, air pollution, and energy consumption. To help answer these challenges, the University of Leeds has created Virtuosity, a world-class centre for city simulation that is pioneering research into the design and delivery of safer, more efficient and sustainable cities. Virtuosity develops solutions to urban transport problems in a human-in-the-loop simulated environment, testing them virtually without the need for expensive and high-risk real-world experiments. Our team in the Leeds Institute for Transport Studies, the largest academic transport institute in the UK, work with partners in industry and government on the development of transport systems, with notable studies in intelligent speed adaptation, eco-driving and driver distraction, and is now making a key contribution to testing human interaction with highly automated driving systems. To undertake this research, we have established the finest suite of mobility simulators anywhere in the world. At the heart of our research facilities, the highly immersive kinematic experimental research laboratory. Hiker is the largest high-resolution cave-based pedestrian simulation environment in the world. The Hiker Lab allows participants to interact with different urban environments and vehicles, with a level of real-world performance that is not possible to achieve using head-mounted virtual reality equipment alone.
The Hiker Lab is a 4-meter by 9-meter immersive environment. We have 8 4K projectors with 3 glass walls. We have markers on their head and on their body to dynamically create the scene as the participants walking in the world. This experience is surprisingly immersive.
You can feel the risk of the cars coming. It feels like you can touch them. Very strange, but at the same time, it's amazing.
A range of variables can be changed to address different research questions.
We're looking at the interaction of pedestrians with future automated vehicles to try and improve the safety of these vehicles as they get deployed in our cities. One of the other projects that we're looking at is how drivers and pedestrians interact with each other.
We can integrate the hiker with our driving simulator and our truck simulator that allows multiple participants to interact,
helping us understand human behaviour, challenges and limitations to design better transport systems for future cities.
We can do a wide variety of testing in any transport-related activities.
We can basically create any kind of infrastructure, whether it's Leeds or New York, and look at how different kinds of people interact with it in a very quick way, in a very safe way, and a controllable and affordable way.
Now, with the help of Virtuosity, future transport technologies and systems can be trialled safely and cost-effectively in Virtuosity's state-of-the-art simulator suite. For more information about Hiker and the range of simulators at Virtuosity, contact virtuosity at leeds.ac.uk.
Thank you. Okay, so that's is one of our major sort of showpiece facilities on campus, but another key facility for us in engaging with industry and with SMEs is through our Innovation and Enterprise Centre, Nexus, which opened 2 years ago now, albeit that we've lost a big chunk of the intervening period through the pandemic. But already this is making massive strides in terms of working with industry and opening up our contacts. I mean, it's a community, as you can see from the slide here. It's a community of innovators located in purpose-built, high-quality accommodation with labs, and but importantly, giving access to the academics on campus and facilities such as Virtuosity. Interestingly and importantly too for today, the Connected Places Catapult have a dedicated office on site at Nexus as well, which is their sort of stepping off point really to working not just with Leeds, but with working with partners across the north of England. Okay, next slide, please. Yeah, just a couple of images there of the opening event that we held for Nexus itself and for the opening of the Catapult office, and just a picture of the offices that we have there, which we're also looking to further develop into a space for multiple catapults. So we're talking to the Satellite Applications Catapult and Digital Catapult in particular about this. Yeah, if you could move to the next slide again, please. So yeah, just a bit more about Nexus. This this capability enables businesses from all sectors to connect. So it's not just transport, albeit that those were the examples shown. In Virtuosity, Nexus is working across all sectors. We host a large number of resident SMEs and startups, including Slingshot, who you'll be hearing from shortly. This enables those companies to conduct research, to interact with academics, to access technologies and IP that's held by the university, to work with us to access funding for research and innovation. And also it's underpinned by training programs and the whole team of business support staff to make sure that they're able to get the best out of their business with the limited resources when they're working at a small scale. Next slide, please. Yeah, so this was just an example here. I just put a few of the elements together here, just to show how the ecosystem comes together. So here we have the academic subject matter expertise, such as is held within the Institute for Transport Studies. And then in the middle of this slide, we have the supporting infrastructure. So having the capability to be testing virtual prototyping of solutions within Virtuosity, underpinned by Catapult activity as well, and the Catapult not only as a support agency, but also as partners in collaborative research projects that we undertake here at the university, and then also Nexus in there. And then obviously on the right-hand side of the diagram there, we have the innovative businesses who are able to benefit as a result, and this real, the strength of us all coming together, hence the symbolism of the chain at the bottom. Next slide, please. So just translating that into the classic TRL model here. This is a slide that I borrowed from a presentation by that was put together for the Catapult review a few years ago. But yeah, in terms of technology readiness levels, you can see here how universities are at one end in terms of the basic pure research, and then the application at the far end of the TRL chain, and then the role that the Catapult plays in the middle of that to bring the two ends of the spectrum together. If you could spin the next slide up as well, please, now. So this just shows where now, Nexus, we've taken quite a significant stride to extend the role and the remit of the university into the higher TRLs, overlapping with what the Catapult does and working very closely with the Catapult in order to do that. And then Slingshot as a university spin out as well, also helping to to facilitate this crossover, so strengthening where the weaknesses might otherwise be in translating more fundamental research into innovation and application. Okay, next slide, please. Yeah, so this was my final slide before I pass on to David, but just demonstrating here how what we're doing now specifically with Slingshot is to we've just set up a knowledge transfer secondment within the university, which will help us to embed the work that we do here. So we'll be taking the models and the simulations and the digital twins, which David will tell you about now, and to be able to stream them into the Virtuosity facility, so we will be able to work with partners across an even broader range of research applications and look at problems in a virtual environment, whereas, as was described on the video, we can look at complex problems in a safer and reproducible virtual environment. So that's where the power comes now from our extending our relationship with Slingshot. So I think that's all I have to say for now.
Thank you, Eric.
I'll pass over to Dave.
Thank you very much. Can we have the next slide? So very quick introduction myself. So I'm Dr. David McKee. I'm the CEO and founder at Slingshot Simulations. And just to introduce us, I'd like to start with a video. So if we could go to the next slide and play that video, please. Thank you.
Welcome to the world of limitless opportunity. Hundreds and thousands of data points collated and seamlessly shared at lightning speed to a central cloud, feeding the creation of sophisticated on-demand simulations, highly detailed synthetic worlds, accurate virtual models, a perfect digital twin of anything you can imagine. The Internet of Simulation is your passport to a world of possibilities. A smart testing and analysis platform with the power to predict behavior and deliver in-depth, actionable, intelligent insights. Do you want to make your city smarter? The data collation and analysis capabilities of the Internet of Simulation offer untold opportunities. In a warehouse, simulations forecast the best route through the system exploring thousands of possible scenarios, compared against live data cues from cars, buildings and people, creating a logistical, virtual roadmap, predicting outcomes, enabling smart decisions, identifying the most efficient, cost-effective path from warehouse to delivery point. Do you need a deeper, on-demand view of your data? As systems get more connected, the Internet of Simulation enables faster modeling of the whole network, from device to cloud, creating a chain reaction of processes, drawing power from miles away, exploring all these simultaneous events that can be tracked and analyzed in a virtual world of complex data, pulled together into place for a clearer, bigger picture. Do you want to improve manufacturing processes or accurately calculate premiums? A car is manufactured from thousands of parts, shipped in from worldwide suppliers, each part with a history and behavior, in a simulation shared over the cloud, which are brought together using co-simulation to create a digital twin that's augmented with driver behavior and car performance, where everything is recorded, analyzed and predicted, allowing the premium to be adjusted as things change. Can you begin to imagine the potential of these groundbreaking digital twins? What opportunities and safeguards could this unlock for your business? Are you ready to unlock the power of the Internet of Simulation?
Thank you. Can we go to the next slide, please? Brilliant. So some background quickly on Slingshot simulation. So as Eric has mentioned, we are a spinout from the University of Leeds. Over the last decade or so, since 2007, the team at the university, we have worked across over $100 million worth of research, and over $3 million was directly invested in the technology that became Slingshot in 2019. As a business, we are focused exclusively on how we collaborate with partners from research institutions, universities, independent institutions, third parties, corporates, and so forth, so that we can truly democratize the way business analytics, digital twins, simulations, machine learning, and so forth can be brought to the market that is cost effective, that is the lowest cost market player there to truly transform the way we work in this. And what motivates us? If we could go to the next slide, please, there are 4 key things that we're looking for. We're looking to enable better and faster decisions. We're looking at saving money whilst doing so, and that is through 2 things. We save money by making less mistakes, by reducing the time, and therefore overall reducing the costs. In order to achieve that, we enable the understanding of wider context, so the data around you, whether this is in the cities, whether it's the population, whether it's transport, weather data, all of that together, brought together in a digital environment that reflects on and mirrors and evolves ahead of the physical world that we live in, to facilitate smart decision making and storytelling. And the storytelling is really important because that's what enables a stakeholder engagement, from the cleaner in the building up to the CEO, up to your local butcher, whoever it is, can understand what you're talking about and engage in decisions. And a really great example of this is we see that in the UK, when we look at planning decisions around infrastructure, bridges, roads, etc., less than 2% of the population have actually been engaged in that decision-making process during the planning process. So that raises a big question: what about the other 98%? And how do we engage with them? How do we reach them? And we need innovation in this space, and that's why we're working with the University of Leeds. So if we could go to the next slide, and I'm going to talk through just a couple quick examples of some of the work that we're doing with the university that are feeding into the work with Virtuosity. If you'd like to hit play, that'd be great. So in this example, what we're going to see is some transport modeling that was done in partnership with Leeds City Council, York and Hull City Councils, as well as the University of Leeds and the standards bodies over in the US, looking at combining disparate data sets from demographics, economics, weather data, as well as transport simulation and so forth, to look at what was going on and what would be the traffic situation when we return back from COVID into the cities when we're no longer in a lockdown. In this particular situation, we were looking at some of the traffic data from sensors as well, feeding that all in there using multi-objective optimization, using origin destination matrices as well, to provide those solvers to identify the hotspots areas that need consideration. So if we then move on to the next slide as well, we'll see another example where this is being applied in a different context, but it's the same challenge that needs to be solved, where we're looking at a different data set, but actually affects transport in a different way. In this example, we're pulling in satellite data and we're specifically looking at ground movement. So here we were looking at the absolute ground movement over a 5-year period from the European Space Agency Sentinel-1 satellites. And looking at here, we see the raw image data that comes in. It's not very useful, it's not very pretty. Actually, that doesn't help the decision making. What becomes useful is when we map that onto the assets that are underneath that, whether it's the buildings, the roads, the bridges, and so forth, and we can look at the risk of fractures, the risk of subsidence. And unfortunately, there was a great example of this over in Florida that we all saw in the news there a few weeks ago. And actually, what is really interesting is in the center of this screen is a big area where there's been a lot of building work. Those who are familiar with Leeds will know, with Channel 4 moving into the center of there. And there's one building there in particular, which has moved 10.57 millimeters on average per year. Now, I'm not a civil engineer, but buildings shouldn't move as far as I'm aware. Pulling all of this data together into one context, combined with the transport data, combined together to provide insights that can genuinely transform decision-making. I'd like to finish with this video, which just showcases some other angles that we're working on.
The 1832 South Central service to Brighton, fast to East Croydon. Customers for London Road, School, Falmer and Lewis, also Hove and stations to Worthing should change and right.
Okay, thank you. So hopefully that gives you a flavor of a broad range of the work we're doing with the University of Leeds. We're working very closely with Eric and the team there, and look forward to the discussion later today. So thank you very much.
Thank you, David. Thank you, Eric. We're slightly behind the schedule, just to note, but your presentation, I can already see some links with our next speakers, who will talk about international knowledge exchange between a UK-based company, that's Novaya, and a University of Witwatersrand in Johannesburg, South Africa. Both organizations are partnered up as part of a recent, very successful project led by CPC called Urban Links Africa. And Yuri, Miriam, over to you to talk about your urban solution.
Thank you very much, Metodi. Thank you very much. I guess I'll start and then I'll pass over the word to Miriam.
That would be great. Thank you.
Yeah, so I'll try to be also quite quick as we are a little bit behind the schedule, and I'm going to try to take not that much time. No, can I have the first slide, please? The next one. yeah, just couple of words about ourselves and what the program was. So my name is Yuri, and I'm heading Nova Labs, which is the planning consultancy and tech company. So we have been working in the field of urban planning for about 10 years, and actually initially we are a spin-off of the university as well. So, but we have been independent for quite a while now. And we work basically with the public authorities quite a lot, and with the private companies like property developers. So that's the main two client categories. And within our projects, we often develop also digital tools. So we work with the planning authorities in digital transformation projects, particularly in developing GIS systems. So actually, with the University of Witwatersrand, we started working before the EULA program, which Metodia has mentioned. We run a quite large research on urban agglomerations, and in particular in how different municipalities develop the land which is on the borders of their jurisdictions. And that's when we first came in contact with University of Witwatersrand, looking into Johannesburg within the BRICS Urban Lab project. Miriam, I will pass over a word to you just to tell a couple of words about the university and what you are focusing on as well.
Thank you very much, Yuri. Hello, everyone. My name is Dr. Miriam Maina, and I'm a postdoctoral researcher at the NRF Chair in Spatial Analysis and City Planning, which is based at the School of Architecture and Planning in the University of the Witwatersrand. And like Yuri has said, the NRF, the Chair in Spatial Analysis and City Planning is mostly charged with doing a lot of sort of action-oriented research and collaborating with other universities and corporations and, for example, SMEs around the world, but also embedded within the University of Witwatersrand system, which is also championing, as all the other presenters before have said, an approach to research and innovation that is driven towards developing practical solutions for present-day urban problems. So at the chair in Spatial Analysis and City Planning, really what we try to do is bring our expertise, our academic expertise in our understanding of cities and how they're developing, to begin to actually work towards formulating new and innovative solutions to tackling the pertinent problems of urbanization, urban change, and all the multi-layered issues facing cities today, as we are all familiar with. Yuri, back to you to share a bit more about the program challenge that we were given.
Thank you. So yeah, we have been looking for an opportunity to work together for quite a while, actually, on a different projects, and this EULA project, the Connected Places Catapult Urban Links Africa, was an excellent opportunity to do that. So the program has looked into a number of cities in South Africa and Kenya, and the challenges different cities face. So the Johannesburg challenge was framed around mobility, and the mobility problem in Johannesburg, for those who's been there, is very familiar. So the system runs on so-called paratransit, which is sort of informal public transport, which doesn't have fixed routes, which doesn't have any digital tool to actually understand where it goes and when, and the fees also varies, and there is a lot of research done on that, how it functions, why it's unsafe, etc. And there were quite a few attempts to transform it and map it. So we initially started looking into that problem with the tool we have developed before for other cities, because the mobility problem, it's not only about the informality of the public transport itself, but it's also the way the city is structured, and why public transport is needed and what type of trips are being done for that. And why there are so many. So Johannesburg kind of reflects the problem of many cities in the way that it's structured inefficiently, and specifically there is a huge social spatial segregation and uneven distribution of the infrastructure, namely that's utilities and also the social infrastructure. So the tool we developed before inside of the Nova Labs was a so-called infrastructure accessibility tool, which measures the accessibility of basically of dwellings to essential infrastructure, and so that when you calculate the spatial structure on the basis of the tool, you understand what your planning actions should be in order to reduce unnecessary trips, and so that to make existing public transport much more efficient. So we started kind of with that proposal initially, which as we were developing that, as our partnership has been shifted quite a lot, and we developed a tool which is called One City, which we're going to talk about right now. Can I have the next slide, please? So for that project, we put together this quite small team, which is still a core team for the project. So it's 50-50 pretty much, the UK SME and University of Witwatersrand. So we have also advisory board, which is now being extended. The advisory board is actually led by the head of NRF of Witwatersrand, Professor Philip Harrison, and which were immensely helpful for the project overall. And just being a little bit kind of preemptive is that I would think that the project wouldn't be possible without the collaboration with the university. Can I have the next slide, please? So the tool we came up with is basically the transformation of what I was talking about of infrastructure accessibility tool into the tool for the property developers and planning consultants in order to evaluate spatial structure and the land the way the city does. So basically the tool is based on the open data, and that's another very important part of the project and very important kind of angle on the project where the university is vital for us. So basically the tool combines the different sources of data, which is combination of the open data, the private data, and also the government data part of, and this is quite important because quite a lot of government data is classified and can't be released just in open data. So it transforms that into an analytical tool which helps developers to search, evaluate, and run due diligence for the sites they choose that basically align with the planning authority's intention to overcome those challenge of the spatial segregation and inefficient spatial structure. So to better explain that, can we have the next slide and launch the video?
Urban sprawl is a global problem resulting in fragmented and inefficient cities with mobility and sustainability challenges. These challenges heavily affect poorer residents who often live on the outskirts of metropolitan areas, far from the jobs and amenities they need. City administrations develop elaborate plans to make cities more inclusive, connected, dynamic, and efficient. But decision-making and planning operations are often hindered by everyday inefficiencies as planners and developers battle with outdated systems, disparate data sources, time-consuming processes, and administrative silos. Our solution, the new One City digital tool from Novaya Labs and the WITS Research Chair in Spatial Analysis and City Planning, is being piloted in Johannesburg, South Africa. One City allows developers and businesses to identify, evaluate, and compare investment opportunities that align with official spatial strategies.
One City can be integrated into local authority GIS systems to streamline and support land use planning. One City incorporates data from over 30 qualified sources to deliver current information and analysis on a single platform. The easy-to-use web-based interface includes a multi-layered map with unique features and insights. One City allows developers to choose priority site parameters to easily identify investment opportunities, compare prospective sites, be notified when new sites emerge that meet requirements, access detailed site analytics that provide actionable insights on risk, and find up-to-date documents for due diligence. Using the One City tool, developers reduce analytics and consultancy costs and align their development proposals with city strategies, increasing likelihood of successful planning outcomes. One City for transparent and data-driven urban transformation.
So just to kind of explain a couple of challenges and also the opportunities we came across with that collaboration. So basically, the whole program has been running through the COVID time, and we didn't have even a chance to travel to Johannesburg during this project, and our partner, the University of Witwatersrand, was absolutely vital for the success of that project. Also, this project, I want to mention two kind of features on that, which I think wouldn't be possible without the collaboration with the university in this particular case. So one of those was the user research we were running. And the user research is crucial for that, which had to be run with basically with members of the city authorities, with also businesses and planners. And in order to access those, and in order to run those user research interviews with a good quality, you needed a very respected center like the University of Witwatersrand is. The second aspect, which is crucial for this kind of tool, is the whole open data discussion. As like in the European Union and in the UK, this is something which is being kind of being formed right now. And we are right now in what's called the third wave of open data. That's also very important to have the partner who has more sort of other goals, not just the commercial goals. And even if the company has sort of some kind of mission, you need someone independent who kind of helps with the discussion and create this link between non-commercial and commercial use. So I just want to say that sort of for these kind of projects which sit between the private and the public, the university becomes those very important link and very important partner. I wanted just to say a couple of words as well about the program itself, because the program had this business and academic boards, which were crucial for that. So that's also was very important. Miriam, if you want to add anything, please do.
Thank you, Yuri. So I believe you've covered most of these items in this slide, but I agree that, so the university was not only embedded within the Johannesburg setting and able then to connect some of the local research you were doing with the municipality, because some of our research networks there, but also through the local network of universities, not just within South Africa, but across the whole African continent. You can begin to see how such research then can be embedded deeper and deeper within both the academic community, but also the urban development community within the continent. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Miriam. And also what we are looking right now is quite interesting how the partnership is transforming, because on every stage, the role of the SME and the university, they change. It's also to this very good slide by Eric Somerson about the TLR levels and where the university, the Catapult and the SME sits, and we see that transformation and the project gets into commercial phase, and it's quite kind of promising that we see the role of the university on every stage. It changes, but it stays vital. Thank you very much. I would be happy to answer any questions later on.
Thank you, Yuri. Thank you, Miriam. Yeah, great to hear about the progress of One City throughout Urban East Africa and beyond that. And again, I'm inviting the audience to field your questions in the Q&A box so that we'll pick them up in the panel session. Well, this leads me to our penultimate speaker from Brunel University of London and Aquascience. So Dr. Hitesh Patel, who is Senior Business Development Manager at the University of Brunel, Dr. Eugene Pei, Director for Postgraduate Studies and Program Director for Product Design Engineering, and incubated in the university startup Aquascience, represented by its founder, Sudeep, I hope I pronounced it correctly, Das Biswas. Floor over to you to talk about your ways of working together and insights that you'd like to share with our audience.
Thanks, Metodi, and thanks to the Connected Places Catapult for giving us the opportunity for this session. Really interesting talks and quite a different varieties of ways of universities and SMEs engaging. So hopefully our presentation will give a slightly different flavor. So as Metodi said, I work at Brunel University. We're based in West London. And I had a business development team at Brunel University. And if you could go to the next slide, Metodi. So it's just a rough outline of the order of play for our session, and I think Metodi has just outlined it. It's probably slightly different. Sudeep is going to go right at the end after Eugene. Next slide, Metodi, please. So just a brief overview of what I'm going to cover as part of my session. I wouldn't dwell on it. I've got quite a few slides. I've included them for information because I'm quite conscious it's 5 minutes. And I want to focus more on the last few slides just to give a better flavor of how universities interact with SMEs. So next slide, Metodi, please. So just a brief idea about Brunel University London. As I said, we're in West London, very near to Heathrow. We're one of the very newer universities. We were primarily set up as a mission to deliver sort of very applied delivered teaching. And the mission we have is very much about working closely with industry and transferring our knowledge and know-how to companies. So that's a key aim. And we're very successful, as you'll see from that slide, in working with sort of business university funding. So you'll see Innovate UK there. We come fairly high on top of that, and European funding as well. Next slide, Metodi, please. I wouldn't dwell on this, just to give you a brief overview of our key areas of priority. So we have 5 institutes covering multidisciplinary, interdisciplinary research across digital, community, health, sustainability, and manufacturing. Next slide, Metodi. So it's just a brief idea about, you've heard from Jennifer and Eric and Miriam, sort of very different ways in which SMEs can engage with universities. So this is just an overview. So you'll see at this end, I'm one of the business development managers at Brunel University. There's 5 of us. We have a sector focus. So I look after manufacturing and materials. And my main role is to network externally and meet people like Sudeep and Aquascience, and then try and link them up with academics at Brunel University, where we may have the expertise to help those companies. So that's one route to us. And we, as I said, we network quite a lot, and that's the key way we engage with SMEs. And hopefully, if you're an SME, you know, this is one way of sort of approaching universities. We have a lot of students, very bright students, and we try and put them into placements with SMEs. So that's another way of engaging with us. Within our business school, we run something called Hive, and that's open to SMEs and any companies, and they run various seminars, events, training events. So that's one other way of interacting. And then we also have something called Co-Innovate, which is a European Regional Development Funded initiative. And their key role is engaging with SMEs in London. So I'm afraid the focus is London for Co-Innovate because of the way that funding was set up. And then you can approach us externally through our website. So we have an external engagement website where you can sort of send an inquiry to us and someone from our office will pick it up. Matodi, next slide, please. So I wouldn't dwell on this. I think Jennifer mentioned there are whole ranges of ways of which you can interact with universities. Next slide, please. So we have, you can have access to facilities as well at Brunel University. So we've got a whole range of facilities you can access. So that's one key way we can support SMEs. Next slide, please, Matori. Couple of slides just to give you an idea. So we all have our own small pot of funding, specifically targeted SMEs. So we gave about 5K of funding. The funding doesn't go to the SME, but will buy some support from the university to help you deal with some specific challenge you have. The key thing we look for from this is the SME's capability of a follow-on collaboration. Next slide, please, Matori. Yeah, next slide. We've also recently set up something called the Business Resilience Fund, and that's really to address the issues SMEs are facing as a result of COVID. I won't dwell much. I think there's information there which will give you an idea if you're interested in using this pot of money to interact with Brunel. Next slide, please, Matori. I thought I'd include this slide because it's very specific to our engagement with Aquasense Innovation Limited. It's just to give you a brief idea of how this interaction took place. So I met Sudeep at the Innovate UK Global Challenge Research Fund event in March last year. We got talking. It was interesting to see what Sudeep was doing and his company was doing. And I could see some connections in terms of the research we're doing at Brunel and the link particularly to this call of how it was going to deliver human-centered design to help address developing challenges. But that just gives you an idea. These sort of collaborations are quite lengthy processes. I'm not saying all collaborations take this long, but particularly when you're applying for external funding, you can see the steps it takes to engage in this sort of funding. So it was about June before we even knew about the outcome of this project. And then over those next 6 months, there was quite a lot of interaction with myself, Sudeep, and I brought in various academics from Brunel to try and help with the project. And Eugene is one of the academics you'll hear from on human-centered design. The interesting thing with this situation was in sort of March, Innovate UK obviously had some funding issues, so the next phase of this funding disappeared. But we've been in constant communication with Sudeep, and we've recently found a different pot of money to try and take this project forward. And Sudeep might want to say a few words. Next slide, please, Matodi. I think this hopefully is my last slide. It's really just to give some idea about what the challenges might be and the benefits might be. So connecting with SMEs, obviously, you're very small sometimes, and obviously resources are an issue. And so reaching out to SMEs can sometimes be very challenging for universities. We're open to work with SMEs and also very large organizations as well. A key thing about these sort of collaborations is managing expectations, and important to address that very early stage, because these sort of collaborations can be quite complicated. There may be issues around the funding constraints. So as I've just said, the GCRF phase 2 disappeared, so we had to look at for different sort of issues. There are also issues around post-funding. So once we get the funding, we may be appointing staff at the university, and that may have some challenges as well. And then meeting the funders' complex guidelines. But there are benefits. You'll have access to a whole range of university expertise to take your technology forward. We have considerable sources of knowledge about funding, and also the capability to address a range of innovation challenges. We also have our own pots of money, which you can have access to. And also we can help you get connected up to companies we might work with. So hopefully that's given you a flavor of how we interact. But I'm more than happy to have a chat at the Q&A, which is, I think, the key thing I'm looking forward to. Next slide, Matori, and I think I'll hand over to Eugene.
Thank you, Hitesh. So just very briefly to give you a background about my what we call take on this. So I've been involved in the project of EcoSense, which we've worked very closely with Sudim and his team. It's just a fantastic way to also try to include what we call human-centered design, as well as design thinking into projects like this, because it involves coming up with solutions for challenges. So you have double diamond approach, where you discover by doing your research, you define project by synthesizing the information you've collected, developing that further, and finally you deliver what you set out to do for this project. So it's a very good way to actually apply design thinking in projects like that. Next slide, please. So here we can see some of the approaches that we try to do to be proactive, and also obviously the challenges that we face. So very briefly, we know generally when you want to, for universities, with SMEs, there can be some challenges, but we find that through time, we become more confident, and also through time, we also understand that SMEs may have very different perspective of things. But here we can try and outline some of the what we call the positive outcomes from that, such as try to be flexible, trying to find out your complementary strengths, really being proactive to build links with the SME as well as with your research office. That really helps things to move further, and we have been very successful in doing this as well. So I'll be very happy to answer questions in the chat box again. Thank you. Next slide, please.
Thanks, Eugene. Over to Sudeep.
Thank you.
Hi, thanks everybody. I know I'm conscious of the time, so I guess we should have given the innovation first. A little bit of a perspective. So bottom line is, globally, the challenge that we wanted to address was that almost 2.2 billion people don't have access to clean water. And due to very outdated regimes of, manual testing and constant contamination of industrial, human, natural reasons, it becomes incredibly difficult for communities and government bodies to really know what is the status of water in terms of both quality and availability. I mean, both are big challenges in many markets. So when we set up our startup around 2 years back with an intensive focus to go after how we can leverage next generation technology in an affordable way to actually solve some of the global problems. And that was the real purpose behind this whole initiative and the startup. So what we actually have is an innovation that kind of is a real-time online monitor, detect, and prevent kind of a solution. So on one side, there are sensors that actually detect the quality and availability of water. It then transmits that to a cloud-based platform, which is Aqua Cloud, which then monitors, does things like time trends, analytics, heat maps, and then essentially has user-friendly mobile apps where communities and public bodies can get real-time alerts and notification. So in terms of the benefits, the major benefits for the innovation is that citizens get to know what the status of their water is, and that helps them prevent diseases, contamination, outbreaks. And for authorities, it helps them because they can actually now, with much lesser number, avoid this whole regime of outdated manual testing where you have to keep going and testing water. So we had this opportunity, like Hitesh mentioned, about which was funded by Global Challenge Research Fund, or rather funded by Innovate UK, but supported by Global Challenge Research Fund. And we were, when we went to that event in March, I remember we had no idea how to go about it. We knew we had a good innovation, but we really needed a lot of expertise and gaps. And I think Hitesh and me connected in that event, and then eventually we built up a very strong working relationship. And then most importantly, Hitesh really went out of the way and connected to several academics who he thought would be suitable. So I would say actually, although Hitesh says it took time, honestly, having worked with other universities, I thought the time-wise it was brilliant. I mean, we really got going in practically 20 days. We got synced up with 2 academics, Eugene and Evina, and Eugene himself was extremely passionate about this whole area. So that's also the other factor. I mean, one of the feedback towards other SMEs is that, you will not only have to have a good university that has the right support and structure like Hitesh mentioned, but also you have to have passionate academics, because if the academics are not passionate about the cause or the innovation and the problem, you really have a big disconnect there. So it's really important to match the two. So we were quite lucky. We got really some very strong support. And one big gap that we had and one big area that we had was the whole project or the whole call from Innovate UK was themed around human-centered design, like Eugene mentioned. So the whole idea was that you don't do an innovation just for the sake of launching an innovation in an emerging market, because it invariably fails. The whole idea was, how do you build an innovation from ground up that factors into account the needs and demands, and then you design the innovation ground up. So if I move on to the next slide. So what we essentially did was, battery probably running out. Let me just connect the laptop battery. Yeah. So in summary, this was a 5-6 month feasibility study, which was meant to essentially assess the viability of our innovation. So we picked up a state in the eastern part of India, Bengal, where across 3 regions and close to a base population of around 1 million, we picked up close to 4,000 people and 400 households, close to 1,000 household surveys, and then we conducted that over a period of 1 month, and we tried to understand what are the various drive behind water quality availability, how do they get to know how it affects their lives. We then looked at the need and demand for our innovation. We validated techno-commercial assumptions, and most importantly, we conducted a pre-prototype trial of our innovation across 3 regions. And like we mentioned, our key partners were Brunel, who came up with Eugene's team, who supported us very heavily on the human-centered design, the approach, the methodologies, how to conduct the focus groups. And we had a charity partner in India who was supporting with the on-ground field activities. So as part of this, I think we, sorry, my video went off. Okay, somebody has stopped my video. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So anyway, so that's the pretty much summary. But the good news was that because of this whole, feasibility, although we were very disappointed that we didn't go to phase 2, not for our fault, but because, as you know, there was a foreign aid budget cut, and the entire phase 2, which was about commercialization and taking it to the next level, got discontinued. But we have remained in touch with Brunel, and we are constantly looking at new opportunities to extend the innovation. So I think it was not just a project. I think these are all relationships that you build for a lifetime, and I guess we are very, very happy and thankful to the support that Brunel gave us. Without their support, we could not have got the wings for innovation to take off. And although we are still challenged with the whole COVID situation, but we are making small progresses and constantly looking out for new areas to partner with. It's pretty much it from my side.
Thanks, Sudeep. If I could just add one thing, it's been a really great, an interesting experience working with Sudeep and his company, because it's this sort of things that universities are really keen to do. And I know you might hear that universities are sometimes very difficult organizations to navigate through, but I think if you find the right person, there is a lot of support out there for SMEs, and universities are very, very keen to try and work with companies in the UK to try and get our research out there. And there are academics like Eugene who are very much interested in this sort of activities. So Sudeep, thanks very much for the opportunity to collaborate with you. Over to you.
No, same here.
Thank you.
I just saw one question from one of the SMEs. I mean, one of the SMEs, I think, asked a question just a while back about how to engage with universities. If you're okay, I can just probably give an answer on behalf.
Well, yeah, you can give an answer now, and then we can kind of go back to this in the panel session. But I know that you won't be able to stay there, so yeah, feel free to kind of provide your.
I'll just take 20-30 seconds since I have to move on. I think as a fellow SME, all I can tell you is there is no substitute for hard work. I mean, nothing comes to you on a platter, neither for the SME nor for the university. So this is like any other partnership. You will have to really go through. The events definitely help. In my case, personally, I think the physical event, and this literally happened 3 days before we went into a lockdown on 12th March, I still remember. But there are lots of online events that take place. I think one of the things I would strongly recommend is to sign up with KTN and be part of their newsletters and their various events. Same with Catapult as well. I think it's a hard journey. There's no success. There is no shortcut for an SME or an entrepreneur or a early startup. You'll have to be at it. There is a meeting of minds, but most importantly, there is also important to, I think, right at the start, validate and be very transparent about the budget, because these study fundings come with very limited budget, especially if you're doing phase 1. So you have to be very upfront and do your homework openly to the university and the academic as to what is the scope, what is the role. Because remember, these universities are huge. I mean, they can do practically everything. So if you simply go to them and say, what can you do for us? That's not the question. The question should be, this is my project, this is what I want you to do, and this is what the complementary value we can bring in. And then I think if you are very transparent about the budget and other factors, it helps a lot. So more homework required for the SME. It's unfortunately, I'm sorry.
Well, great. I completely agree. It's always kind of great to hear kind of word of advice from from a practitioner, someone who actually runs an SME. And that's true that it's kind of requires proactivity and efforts from both sides, I'd imagine. So thank you again, Sujip. I know you're very busy today, so it will be great to catch up probably at later occasion as well. For all the rest, we will reconvene in the Q&A panel session. But before that, our last, but by far not the least interesting segment is from our academic engagement manager here at the Connected Places Catapult, Julia Brady, who's been engaged in roles facing different sides of knowledge exchange, and will present some of our own activities and propositions in that field. Julia, great to see you.
Hi, Metodi. Thank you for introducing me. Can everyone hear me? Okay.
Yep.
Great. Thank you. I'll try to reduce my time as well, in the interest of allowing us for a meaningful discussion at the end.
We are getting there. Yeah, we're slowly recuperating.
We are. So if we can move to the next slide. Yes, so that's me. If we can move to the next one. Thank you. So I've been asked to focus today on the academic engagement program and the ways that we leverage our academic relationships to benefit all of us, so industry, SMEs, government, and the ecosystems we are in. Connected Places Catapult is one of 9 catapults. So this slide focuses on clarifying our domain focus. We are often asked about the sector areas that we work with. So our domains and challenges are listed on this slide to the left: decision-making, built environment, mobility or transport, public space, well-being, and critical infrastructure. And we particularly focus on building resilient places, post-COVID recovery and longer-term resilience, net zero, and leveling up or regional development. Many of our speakers today have already highlighted benefits of working with universities, and it's really clear to us all, and probably becoming more and more visible in terms of how the universities play into that regional innovation agenda that the local and regional authorities are progressing with us in terms of innovation places, innovation hubs, through expanding our imagination with the art of the possible, providing the facilities, assets, capabilities to trial, to verify, demonstrate, showcase, and evaluate the technologies and the solutions that are considered, through providing the skills that enable the places of today and the future to grow and to importantly anchor some of the development and growth in the regions, in that place. And also a number of our speakers today touched on that societal engagement and universities enabling us to engage meaningfully with local communities through either broader and more effective societal consultation processes for planning, but also through enabling the reach into the other key partners in the region, especially for the SME market. Next slide, please. Although we are very different as catapults, we all tend to engage large organizations, be it regional national authorities, OEMs or transport bodies. We then bring in SMEs to provide solutions to meet those challenges. And we bring universities developing and constantly revisiting the mechanisms of doing so. So for the Connected Places Catapult, this is reflected in this model of an innovation factory, segmented into 5 pillars. And it's a live model, so we also welcome your kind of critique or views in how we could present it. We regularly work with organizations like the Department for Transport, or transport bodies like Highways England and Network Rail, firstly to identify the challenges, consider some of the policy pushes and commercial insights as part of that process. We then help those organizations develop a business case for change, find the best course or route, minimizing the risks and minimizing the timeline and maximizing impacts. And then we accelerate some of the innovation solutions through a range of interventions that you can find listed in that 4th column, including R&D projects of various sizes and at various TRL levels, through exploitation planning, transport research innovation grants, KTPs that got a mention here, Innovate UK funded programs, and the well-established accelerator program that we have. And it normally finishes with some form of a series of demonstrators or a demonstrator and a showcase. We also impact track, as you'd expect, all our programs. Within this slide, I started by highlighting some of the interventions that we regularly work with universities on delivering, but actually I've already noticed that the showcasing element should have got the highlight. So the challenge identification, clearly this is where the university input is absolutely critical in identifying, prioritizing, articulating, and we regularly bring our academic colleagues into those challenge workshops. We also run sandpits for academics, bringing in very different perspectives, and they often help to rethink the problems of today and take this kind of longer term perspective. In thought leadership, as you would expect, we ground much of our publications like the innovation brief and the webinar series, bringing in leading academic perspectives from our networks, and that includes the webinar that we ran with the professor from Cranfield, Michael Bolakis, and Dr. Eleonora Morganti on the food supply chain management. We also partner in demonstrating and showcasing. You may have noticed our zero emission flight program, and we have a live interest in current capabilities within universities that could host and firstly enable demonstration of some of the technologies in that space. There is an increased recognition that universities also in many cases would benefit from people from the outside coming in and spotting some of the best ideas. I mean, many of the tech transfer offices do that, but it's sometimes challenging to know what the current transport industry needs are or understood to be a priority and a pressure point in that sector. So one way we do that within a Catapult is embedding our staff within universities. Our Catapult has currently 4 locations in the UK, and 2 of those are co-located with universities. So we are very proud to have presence within the Nexus that Eric Thomason presented earlier, as well as the University of Strathclyde. Many of the propositions you see on this Innovation Factory journey actually are equally applicable to entrepreneurial academics. For instance, exploitation planning that enables to evaluate the strengths of the current consideration of innovation in terms of perhaps the primary audience of the use cases, and helping to consider alternatives or other use cases, market drivers, and inform effectively a best route to market, be it commercial or not so, taking this wider perspective of societal and UK-wide benefits of that innovation. We also engage universities in different ways through the accelerators, through facilitators, through the use of the facilities, but also to evaluate and build deep partnerships with participating SMEs and academics who may help to validate and feeding some of their research fundings into. And we enrich our masterclasses for SMEs with input from academics. The most recent one supported by one of our colleagues that engaged with us through the project with University of Leeds, Decarbonate, Daniela Padot. Next slide, please. So I won't spend much time on this one. We've seen the TRL level and the focus of the catapult. Just to draw your attention, this might be useful to just note the funding pots that fall primarily in our reach. We tend to operate between TRL levels 4, sometimes 3. We have a few examples of TRL level 2 engagements, most recently through the Transport Research Innovation Grant Programme, up to TRL 6. So we primarily focus our joint efforts with our partners on iUK. We are a delivery partner for Innovate UK's EDGE programme. SBRI funding is the ultimate kind of destination, often lead to pre-commercial trials and different stages of accelerators, early stage innovation supported through this established TRIC program. On the right-hand side, you see a summary of why we work with universities, probably a no-brainer after today's session. What I would like to draw out from here is why there is hopefully a significant value of universities working with us as they do, and perhaps even more closely. In a broader sense, the range of our propositions can and does help to focus research or provide direction to the research to the areas of the most acute challenge with the highest potential of positive impacts on the UK. We inform also the route of market for the new ideas that could be instigated by academics, as well as SME partners working with universities so closely. We can help to accelerate innovation and also help to increase and to capture impacts. It is, as I said, work in progress, so we are also keen to find an even better way to showcase the impressive academic capabilities and assets to industry and to often time-strapped and cash-strapped SMEs in order to identify those perfectly matching academics that have the passion for the subject area you just looking to connect or to inspire. We also continue to support the universities to get industry in the UK more interested in a blue sky research, taking a much more longer term view, engaging perhaps the supply chains effectively. And this is to influence where some of the most interesting science is going, also to influence where some of the funding is going, to oil the wheels. Next slide, please. So this is the list of our academic engagement, what we call academic engagement framework. We, as the basis, as the foundation of academic program, maintain academic network. Currently over 400 colleagues are members of that network, active members across the CPC domains. And I would very much welcome, we all would welcome those on this call who are academics, who are not members, to please join us. This is the first port of call for us when we're looking, for instance, for partners for our projects that we are actively involved in delivery on, or consortia that we are forming or helping to form. It's also used very frequently to matchmake between our SME network, which has over 3,000 SMEs working with us at the moment, and to matchmake the two. We also have a very well-established partnership with 6 universities referred to as deep academic alliances, involving universities of Leeds, Cranfield, UCL, Nottingham, Birmingham, and Newcastle. So these relationships are based on our shared commitment to jointly drive high impact through systemic level changes. This is achieved through policy influencing, through influencing of the funding and large-scale CR&D. We also co-fund a business fellow network. Today, you met 3 of our business fellows, Jen, Eric, and Hitesh, and we are very grateful for the 3 of yourselves to be joining and supporting this event. They are all based at UK universities, and they are knowledge exchange, knowledge transfer experts and friends of the Catapult, who are well embedded within our internal and external networks, representing 15 universities in the current wave. The fellows meet on a quarterly basis and are very keen to speak to our SMEs, as you probably heard today. So we would like to open this offer to SMEs on this call and to your contacts and to your friends, so please do pass this message on. If you are an SME and you would like to have this opportunity to speak to our group of business fellows, the next meeting is taking place on the 17th of August. So drop us an email. We'll put contact details at the end of my deck. And we would love to hear from you. If not with respect to this specific date, there will be a repeat 3 months later and at the end of this calendar year. Alongside other catapults, we also host and support researchers in residence. We will be recruiting for a new cohort of those between late summer and at the latest early 2022, with a view of starting at the beginning of the next financial year. The focus being on net zero, social care, and resilience of place in the broadest sense. With an increased engagement in the regional agenda, we also have a very live interest in supporting industry, SMEs, and other key stakeholders of regional innovation programs to better understand and capture, present, and plan for the future skills needs. We've delivered a few really exciting projects in this space, including one led by Ruth Dixon, focused on the future of transport skills, and we're keen to do more in this area. Next slide, please. So in closing, I would like to invite you to join our networks, relevant networks to who you are, and I hope that you will find how interconnected they are. Following registration, as long as you work in the Connected Places relevant domain, we would follow with a business needs assessment call, which is the way we triage our registrations. And we look to identify SMEs that have this absorptive capacity and interest to engage with universities, and vice versa. We're on the lookout for interesting research or or entrepreneurial ideas coming from the academic world. And we look to connect you at the right place with the right networks and contacts. The link you will find on this slide deck that we will circulate later also takes you to our open opportunities. One of those I would like to draw everyone's attention to is the currently open call for applications to the Transport Research Innovation Grants for Zero Emission Flight, which is focused on TRL levels between 2 and 5, focused on hydrogen storage, handling aircraft refueling and distribution, also electric charging, because we're looking at both routes for aviation, and the future demand scenarios. The closing for this call is on the 1st of August. And we're also inviting SMEs to express an interest to participate in the next industry day focused on critical infrastructure solutions, also open to your expressions of interest for the end of July. And just final mention, Sudeep, I think, highlighted that importance of linking with the right university and with the right academic who has the passion as well as understanding and knowledge of the topic, also the passion for it. So the first port of call, if you're an SME, is very often, and the best call is your local university or your established university contact. However, if you're looking for that more specialist knowledge that may not be available there, or you're looking for leading research in a field that university that you work with may not be currently pursuing, or specific facilities that are needed to demonstrate your tech, you also may want to check out Confa, which is the platform maintained by NCUB. We often use it. It's informed by live feeds of research papers engaging the vast majority of UK-based universities. It's current, and you can find the most recent publications, but also link with projects there. So worth a check. And please do check out our podcasts and our webinars. Thank you very much. Over to you, Methodi.
Thank you, Julia. Thank you for this fantastic wrap-up of our offers and propositions in the SME and academic engagement team. And with this kind of final presentation of this kind of very interesting and super informative, I must say, session, can I invite, and also in the interest of time, can I sort of merge our panel discussion with the kind of breakout sessions for those who are still following us on Zoom and not on YouTube stream, and kind of open the floor for to all of you for any kind of exchange of views, insights, any kind of take-home messages from today's session. And probably to kick off the conversation, I will present you with a sort of a case study, like if and see how kind of what's your take of it is. So if I'm, say, an SME interested to work with a university, and in some knowledge-intensive project, what are the projects? And I assume there is no kind of straight answer, but space for debate here. What are the kind of, how do we manage the joint intellectual property so that I can commercialize on it and the university can do its research? So what would be your approaches, advices to kind of the shared IPR, intellectual property management problematic?
Is that a question to the panel, Methodi, or?
That's a question kind of taking you off stage, or what are the options there to kind of manage IPR, intellectual property rights, so that SME can do what they can do best, commercialize, generating profit, whereas universities can continue their research with the knowledge that their IP is not sort of undermined or compromised.
So
what would be your views?
Yeah, there'll be quite a different response from. So I'll give a Brunel version on this.
Of course.
And our view is very different probably from a lot of universities. We have a very relaxed approach to intellectual property. What our main interest is getting our research out there and making sure it delivers impact, of whatever sort of impact that is. And a lot depends on the funding and how the project is funded in terms of intellectual property. So if the SME directly funds it, intellectual property belongs to them, unless we bring in any background IP that's been developed by the academic through other sources. If it comes through like an Innovate UK funded project, then it's jointly owned IP. In terms of Brunel's view, we're very much into licensing our IP out. And we're not here to make millions out of our IP. Of course, we want a decent return from the intellectual property, but our main goal is to get our IP out there. And that's a very different view you'll hear from a lot of different universities, but I might be doing an injustice to the other universities on this panel here. So that's a view from Brunel.
Eric, can you say about...
Yeah, hi, Matodi. Would I be able to answer? Yeah, from Brighton. Yeah, just to actually echo, Brighton takes a very similar point of view. Essentially, we operate a licensing model, as Satish has described, and very much for us, it's about right to publication or right to be able to use what's generated from projects in terms of teaching. So that's information and results that are non-commercially sensitive. And every relationship is governed by a mutually agreed and sort of beneficial agreement. But exactly echoing what Tish says, we're not there to generally commercialize our output, but we're not very good at it. Quite frankly, it's actually about getting our intellectual property out in the public domain for impact more than anything else. Thank you.
Eugene, you want to say something?
Yeah, just some comments again back to Hitesh. I think what we do in Brunel also depending on where you're coming from. So for me as an academic, usually I try to reach out to SMEs through two ways. One way would be through the businesses directly in terms of through the associations. So I'm quite involved in what we call the Thames Valley Business Association. As an association, it's already a club of people, and they have a kind of that environment. It's already there to connect with an institution. So I get involved with that through talks, through seminars. And another way through what we do at Brunel is also through the CRL, or Central Research Laboratory. So CRL is an incubation center. It's more about tech support. So imagine if you're a startup or a small company and you need help to produce maybe prototypes or electronic components, then you find Brunel academics and students are already involved in the Central Research Laboratory. And that's where businesses can get together as a platform as well. So two ways, one through the business associations, and then it could be through the incubation centers or acceleration hubs. But that's just my own take on that from academics' point of view. And I find it very highly successful model that it works for me in many ways as well, including obviously support from the RSD or other research officers such as Hitesh himself, which also provides that kind of background understanding of what's going on in the industry and the catapults and things like that. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you. That was really kind of interesting to hear. Eric, do you have anything to say on behalf of Leeds University? And then probably we can ask Yuri and David about the SMEs sort of experience.
Yeah, I would say in Leeds we have very much a mixed model where certainly the great majority of commercialization, inverted commas, activity actually involves licensing IP at no cost. So there again, with the priority to be to maximize the impact of the research that takes place within the university. That said, we also have a very strong commercialization team and a record of producing a number of spin-out companies and paid for licenses as well. So it depends on the model of funding as has already been described. And we're actually we've had conversations with the Catapult recently as well as to where the Catapult might fit in terms of helping to identify commercialization opportunities and to work with our SME community in Nexus. But but also about how we try to grow more of an awareness of commercialization amongst academics. So rather than working in a vacuum, they actually do think more about how commercialization doesn't need to be a dirty word. It can be a way of actually making sure that the impact of their research is much wider than it would ever otherwise have been, because their work is actually picked up by somebody else and is developed and productized and applied. So and the final thing, I mean, I don't know an awful lot about this, though the university has recently set up an investment company, and this is a joint collaboration between the universities of Leeds, Sheffield and Manchester to specifically look at investing in spin-outs and innovation from academic research.
Is this like equity investing, or like is it are you talking about equity investing, or
yes,
kind of any sort of grants?
It is, yeah. I can share more information with anyone who's interested after the call. I don't want to misrepresent it, but just to say it is something that the university has developed just in the last few weeks. It's been launched.
Okay, it will be great to find out more, and kind of one of actually my final remarks was meant to be about our kind of next virtual investment day, where we'll be inviting our network of investors to be hearing from our SME community. So if your kind of investor partnership is open up to hear from not just those three universities, spin-outs from those three universities, but kind of wider community, it would be great to have it there as well. So it would be great to find out a bit more. Is there like any investment vehicles, facilities in Brunel, Hitesh? Are you looking at?
No, I think that's so. We're not where. I mean, we are interested in spin-outs, but that's not our focus, because I think you need a different sort of support structure in terms of trying to help with spin-outs. So I think Eugene mentioned. So we have a central research laboratory, which is an innovation space. And I'm trying to think about the name of the company that we work with. They're a very well-known company that set up these sort of innovation spaces. I think there's one in Brighton as well. And that has a support structure there in terms of, so we don't invest any money, but we can help startups access investment through that vehicle.
That's great. Yuri, David, Simon, or Nick, if they are with us, how this looks from the SME perspective in terms of kind of managing a shared intellectual property with the university, which is, needless to say, bigger in size and kind of probably bargaining powers than a small SCB. So can we have like your views on how this works, probably with Yuri?
It's hugely important to get this right. Because you can make or break a relationship over IP. The issue that the SME has is that they don't want complications around their intellectual property when raising money. An investor will be much more excited by an SME that simply owns their patent portfolio and has an unhindered right to exploit, than one that comes along and says, well, yes, we could license this and we could license that and we can license the other. Even if you've got collaboration agreements saying that you shall license on fair and reasonable terms and so on, that for the investor is a lot of work. It's a bit of a red flag. So IP was something that we worked on very hard in our relationship with Brighton, and that's why we have a long-term arrangement in place. And actually, it's very simple. What I do for them is I keep their core team together, even if we don't manage to win any grants. And what they do for me is give me all the IP related to our technology. Now that model doesn't necessarily work for every pairing, but it works for us. So what I would say is work out what does work for you and get it sorted early. Don't let it ever be an afterthought. I think the trouble about us techies is that sometimes legal details like that are an afterthought. We'd rather be developing our tech because that's what gets us out of bed in the morning. But believe me, sort that early.
Yeah, delay. Eugene, you raise your hand.
Yeah, I totally agree with what Nick's mentioned. So what it could be in some situations where SMEs require collective support from maybe different areas or from different stages of the process of their development. It could be maybe different catapults working together collectively by having maybe some sort of like a slingshot program, combine effort, maybe a high value catapult working with Connected Places Catapult to support maybe factories to help them accelerate the growth of production, something like that. So combined effort of different catapults working together. It could be, depending on the situation, a much higher level scale, not just in a siloed way. In that way, you give companies the opportunity to really horizon scan something longer term and something much more ambitious to bring them up from lower tier to higher tier level. So it's something that we can obviously discuss depending on the situation there. Thank you.
Just to add to what Eugene has said, I think most of the people have probably left from the looks of it. But obviously the SMEs here might be interested. I mean, as a university, we're really keen to work with SMEs because we recognize there's a different challenge they have. Compared to large companies, they have a very different challenge. And if we can find some sort of solution that encourages SMEs to work with universities, we're always keen to look at. And that's something we, over the next few years, it's a key focus for the university, is how can we better engage with SMEs.
I mean, if I just jump in there a second, because obviously as a spin out, sat on both sides of the table, and we continue to engage. I think we've got engagements with about 7 universities globally at the moment, and this is something that we do deal with on a daily basis. And in essence, it comes down to actually having a very simple understanding of IP. It's not saying that the legal speak is necessarily simple that goes with that, but a simple memorandum of understanding between the key principal stakeholders. So in our case, when we're talking to different universities working directly with whoever's director of commercialization, understanding at the very outset, right, this is the principle that we're working on, and you will own this, we will own this, and these will be the rights moving forward. And kind of to the point that was made earlier, from our perspective, if there is any restrictions on what we can do with IP, that's the end of that conversation. We don't even enter into the relationship. So that's just number one. So we've got IP kind of from various universities that we've worked with, whether it's patents that are licensed in a exclusive manner with no limitations internationally. That is a key criteria. We have other work with, so for example, we're doing some stuff down with the Francis Crick Institute around cell biology modeling and so forth. And it's a different arrangement with them where they own a lot of the IP, but we own our core technology. So you're splitting the domains of interest and say, actually, well, we're not interested in owning the models and the data associated with cell biology. It's not our field, and we wouldn't know how to commercialize that best. However, if they decide to commercialize that, it will run on our platform, and then we will benefit. So you find the mutually beneficial approach, but you create clear lines of segregation as to who owns what and how that works. And it doesn't have to be complicated, but it is always the first line that is checked on every conversation.
Really, yeah. Yuri, do you want to add something to that? Because you have like some sort, like again, like digital solution, not probably as tangible as hardware products and services. So it may be tricky in your case.
Yeah, I think it's pretty well covered by the other SMEs, and obviously, when you work with someone on the other side of the globe, it's even more complicated. And yeah, I would say that, it's not the easiest thing for SME kind of get it right, and especially when you don't have like a lot of options around who you work with. So the SME is small, the university is big, and it's quite complicated. And in our case, it's just, of course, there is a one more level to IP. It's not only who owns what, but also the geography is important, because our partner is crucial in a particular geographies. So we also include kind of these criteria into the equation.
Mm-hmm. If I can add one thing, I mean, yeah, I think IP can be a tricky. I know I maybe simplified what Brunel are saying, and you're right. It needs to be sorted out very much early, in the discussions, and there needs to be a clear understanding of the different partners' position on intellectual property. I don't know if any of the companies here have used it, but obviously, Innovate UK or the UK government came up with this Lambert agreements, which was supposed to be standard models with very sort of boilerplate sort of agreements, which was hopefully there to make these sort of things smoother and iron out. Because you're right, intellectual property can sometimes be a big stumbling block, and yeah, useful to sort it out very much early, and it's not easy.
Yeah, well, it's not easy. It's on our hand, it's kind of complex enough to have like options for all sorts of scenarios. It's just a matter of kind of leveling up a bit the knowledge between, a small SMEs and a kind of a large organization such as university, and kind of find exactly the right kind of pathway to, mutually beneficial agreement, so that it's not a stumbling block, but actually an enabler. So probably we can finish off with this positive note.
Can I just take this meeting as an opportunity, and you can tell me to get lost if you want me to, Matori. I'm going to copy a call that's out there. I'd be interested in even the other universities if they're interested. There's a European Horizon Europe call out around human approach, using human-centered approach and working with artists to around technology. And it's a very interesting call. So if people are up for it, and we've got a bit of time, I'll copy the call high headlines and maybe a brief paragraph. And if people are interested, happy to have a chat if they've got time.
Sure. If anyone doesn't mind, I will sort of kind of pull every kind of email in kind of one kind of message to you all, thanking you, and so that you can pick the details of kind of people that you want to kind of get in touch personally. And also, obviously, most of your contacts are available at the end of your presentations anyway. But to make this a bit simpler, I will just respond to everyone so that you can take the email addresses that you need. That's not a problem. And obviously, I thank you all for your very valuable contributions this morning. I found this particularly enlightening and engaging conversation. Unfortunately, we lost some of our audience in Zoom. We have some, passive listeners who are not able to participate actively on YouTube, but the recording is still there for those who want to catch up later. And let's stay in touch. And the Catapult is, as we say about ourselves, this kind of neutral convener of academics in the industry. So we're always happy to facilitate cross-reference, signpost, anything that is of benefit for either party of this journey. So thank you again, and enjoy.
I just add one thing, Matori. Thanks really to the Catapult for organizing this, and just to say the Connected Places Catapult, I think, is maybe what I've had a much more positive experience of working with the Connected Places Catapult, and as compared to the other catapults, which are probably very difficult to navigate. And it'll be interesting if the companies have got any views. So just a positive comment on the Connected Places Catapult. So well done on doing some of the stuff you're doing.
Thank you. Really pleased to hear that.
Work in progress.
It's always work in progress. We have like a whole operation, like a whole directorate. Like me and Julia are part of it, kind of doing that part of the job. So yeah, and probably it's worth saying that talking about IPR, we run any now and then IPR masterclasses for the SMEs. So we are also there to kind of help kind of uncover some of those issues for the SMEs in our community. So I'll watch out for the next one later in the year.
Metodi, if I can just jump in, and it's actually both points Metodi highlighted. So the Investor Day and IPR classes, they are always very much open to spin-outs and entrepreneurs, irrespective of where they come from. So our language, and it's part of our work in progress, is very much it's SMEs, but we actually are engaging enterprise and helping enterprise progress and flourish. One of the lessons learned, if I can share, the project, Eric, you have kindly mentioned in our joint work on supporting academics funded through seed-funded research under Decarbonate, has been very much that the Catapult came from a perspective of looking at the market. And we were talking about commercializing for commercial benefits. And it was really switching people off, but that's not what we mean. We very much are looking at market traction and impact for everyone's benefits. And it could be a commercial solution, but part of our